All right, I thought this could be an interesting way to make a video where I've seen, it's not my idea. Karsten Runquist, a movie YouTuber, does this, and that's where I got the idea from. But I figured, hey, kind of an interesting way to just talk about some movies that I've seen, and again, get some content up on the movie channel. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get into what I've watched this month. First up, I watched Barry Lyndon, the famous Kubrick film that I rewatched this. I've watched this one before, and it really does, I think, play really well on the second watch. I think that, I watched it when I was younger and maybe a bit too young to fully get into a 3-hour period piece, even if it is a Kubrick one. The second time, I really enjoyed it a lot more. I still don't know if it's my favorite Kubrick movie. I am a big Kubrick fan, but I think that, I still don't know if I would quite put it on the same level as some of his best stuff, just in terms of pure entertainment value, or what I'm getting out of it. It is kind of almost a hangout movie, just set, in as a period piece in an interesting way. A lot of fascinating topics that are discussed throughout this. Definitely things you can read into, and just a fun time. But just not my favorite, which is why I only have it as a 9 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10. Then I watched, the only one I watched in theaters this month, Talk to Me, which has gotten a lot of rave reviews. I was really excited to check it out. To be honest, I didn't really connect with it that much. I thought it was fun, but I just thought there was some pacing issues throughout and some kind of story structure issues that really didn't allow me to get too invested in it. Like, I didn't think there was consistent rising action throughout. It kind of felt like things were happening, and while there were some shocking moments, again, maybe it's just expectations. I think I did hear like people say like it's so shocking. I didn't really think it was like that shocking. I've seen enough horror movies now that like seeing the events that happened weren't like overwhelmingly crazy to me. They were effective, and there were certainly some really interesting topics and interesting, just like I love like how they turn the camera when someone had a ghost enter the body, let them in, whatever you call it. I thought like that, all that camera movement stuff was really cool. It was really interestingly made. I really had a good time with it, and I'm very fascinated in seeing what these filmmakers do next. I know they're YouTubers, so obviously I'm a big fan of that, because obviously I'm a YouTuber as well. It's cool to see them branching out. It just didn't really connect with me. The story didn't really connect with me. I really should say the plot didn't really connect with me. But I liked a lot of the other aspects, so I'm still giving it an overall, relatively positive rating. Then I saw Daddy Longlegs, one of the few Safdie brothers movies I still haven't seen for whatever reason, and I loved it. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I really have done a disservice not checking it out. The Safdies continue to be, in my opinion, two of the most interesting filmmakers going today. It felt so real in such a a unique sense. Even like the dream sequences, I thought were very realistic, if that makes sense. I loved the handheld nature of this movie, and I just loved that initial there's an initial scene of the dad who is like buying a hot dog, and he wants a foot-long hot dog, but they don't have any foot-longs, but so he puts 2 regular hot dogs in a foot-long bun, like asks them to do it. And like the way he does that scene, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's a real character. Like, I know that guy. Like I've seen that guy before. It's just so much fun's maybe the wrong word, because it's not necessarily a fun watch, but in a lot of ways it is too, if you like seeing movies about morally reprehensible characters that are still interesting to watch. And the Safdie brothers are kind of the best at making movies about those characters, so huge fan of this one. Then I watched Inside Llewyn Davis, one of the few Coen brothers movies I still haven't seen yet. The music was fantastic. The music, obviously, if you're going to make a movie about a musician, you have to nail the music. When there's long pieces that are just music, you have to hit it, and it really worked for me. It's Coen brothers at their strongest, really, and I just thought that in a way it was almost like a film equivalent of a folk song. It kind of just had that like the feel of how a song makes you feel. I think it definitely had a point to it. And Oscar Isaac, one of the best really one of the most underrated actors alive. I feel like he gets credit in like film circles, but a lot of maybe mainstream circles kind of view him as that guy from Star Wars, which is unfortunate because he does so much great work and was great in this. I love this movie. Then I saw 27 Dresses, which is, I won't get into why I ended up watching this movie, but it is just a complete disaster. It was just a mess of a movie. Really, I mean, all the kind of rom-coms in this era, I think, are a mess. I always find it weird how, despite the fact that they market towards women, they're pretty much like all like sexist towards women. Like that's like a very common thing that happens in these rom-coms. The way that there's these, like, the main love interest, the main male love interest is just a straight up stalker. Like that's what he's doing. And he ends up being the guy that Katherine Heigl ends up with is, of course, hilarious. None of it makes any sense. And it's this kind of thing where it's like, if you try to think about it for 2 seconds, you're doing it wrong. Just watch it and laugh at it. And it's actually enjoyable, despite the fact that I'm giving it, a 1 out of 5 star here. Then I saw the 1995 film Kiss Me Deadly, which is, a very iconic movie. The way I ended up with this was my girlfriend and I just thought it'd be a fun idea to, as the Criterion sale was about to end, we live nearby a Barnes & Noble that has all the Criterions, so we decided, go there, 50% off, spend $20 on one we haven't seen before, and we watched it, a couple days later, and it was, I think it didn't really hold up for me. A lot of people really like it, and it's, in fairness, it's kind of one of those things where that's just not my favorite, like, genre of, like, the private detective kind of, mystery type genre where you're figuring stuff out. I've just never been a huge fan of that kind of genre in general. So I think it's really kind of one of those things where if it's a genre film for a kind of genre I'm not a huge fan of, like, I'm probably not going to appreciate it too much. Bit of a bummer. I'm also maybe just not the biggest fan of kind of a classic Hollywood in general. I enjoy the classics, who doesn't? But like there's it's very hit or miss for me, that era, I would say. And this one was not a complete miss because, again, there was a lot of stuff to really like in this. I thought like the ending sequence was awesome. I thought that there was, it's very fascinating given how much this means for the future of cinema and kind of paved the way for the future of that genre. It's just not one that I particularly was crazy about. Although, again, didn't hate either. Still gave it 5 stars. Not 5 stars. 5 out of 10. Then I watched Terrence Malick's The New World and enjoyed it. I did kind of feel like, and this is sometimes how I feel about Malick at times, especially more of newer Malick outside of The Tree of Life, is kind of just like, at a certain point, I'm like, well, what's the point of this? Why am I watching it? There's certain sequences that I loved and certain parts of this movie that I absolutely loved. I just don't know if I fully got the entire experience that Malick was trying to give me, especially towards the end. I thought it kind of fell off a little bit. Definitely a unique watch, but I'm not rushing to revisit this movie. Then I watched Wendy and Lucy, and this was really, again, fun watch might be the wrong word, but I would still kind of say fun watch. It's definitely one that pulls at the heartstrings at times, for sure. As a dog lover, as a dog owner, I definitely, felt for the character. I really wanted to love this movie, and definitely kind of reminded me of like Italian neorealism. I mean, it had almost a Bicycle Thieves-esque feel to it. The reason why I couldn't go too crazy on this movie and give it too high of a rating was there were just some little things that, as someone who's worked in a grocery store and as someone who has had no money, and I did get caught shoplifting at one point in my life. Like that's just not how that works. Like there's little things of like, you're not going to jail over stealing a couple of items. Like that's just not how it works. An employee isn't going to reach out and grab you if they see someone shoplifting. I also didn't understand why she shoplifted the dog food in the beginning. To begin with, she had money, and is she going to shoplift a thing of dog food every single day? Some confusion about that stuff. There's little things that are total nitpicks, but it took me out of the movie. It did. And a couple other little things like that. For a movie that is so realistic every other step of the way, when there's something where I'm like, that wouldn't happen. It did take me out of the movie a little bit, but it was still a great movie. And again, if you're not someone who happened to, work that kind of job and know that kind of stuff and have gotten busted for shoplifting, you probably wouldn't even think twice about it. So it's probably just a me thing. But again, this is me just giving my experience with these movies, not giving a objective rating for them, just how I view it. I then watched another 1950s crime noir, this one directed by Stanley Kubrick. I watched The Killing, one of his first movies, and I thought a movie that many people view to be kind of the first one that really put him on the map. in Paths of Glory not too long after. And, I had never actually seen this movie before. I always started with Paths of Glory and then worked up. So I never, kind of had gone back and watched the, his newer, or his older stuff, I should say. I guess I still haven't seen some of the even earlier ones before that. Obviously, once Paths of Glory came out, it was kind of, which was only the next year. That's really where things were, great. He ended up getting hired to do Spartacus, and then made Lolita, and then all of that stuff. But for The Killing itself, it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. It was incredibly entertaining. I thought that, again, sometimes these movies set, in the 50s, not set in the 50s, but made in the 50s, can be a bit slower paced. I really didn't get that with this one. I found it to be incredibly fast paced. I loved the characters. I thought every character was unique. I liked how the story played out, and you were, kind of on the edge of your seat the entire time. It was just a really good, well-made thriller that didn't. It's interesting because for someone like Kubrick, who kind of his brand almost is there's so much more going on than just what meets the eye. This one is very much it's just what meets the eye is what you're watching, but it was so entertaining. Definitely a really fun movie, and an 8 out of 10 for me. Then I watched the French film that was in 1962, Cleo from 5 to 7, made by Angus Varda, and I was blown away by this movie. I really was. French New Wave is very hit or miss for me. Sometimes it really misses, and I feel like at its worst, it kind of just feels like people sitting on a park bench reading poetry for 2 hours. This one did not feel that way at all. When it hits, it really hits for me. And this was maybe my favorite of that kind of era for French films, because I really was just so fascinated by everything, what it meant, sort of essentially tackling a topic of like the meaning of life. It's almost like a Synecdoche, New York type of film, but just with a completely different way of telling that story. The fact that it's all in real time almost shouldn't work, but it still keeps you entertained throughout it. Again, sometimes French New Wave stuff, I feel like almost like feels like it purposely doesn't make it entertaining just to try and seem smarter. This movie lets itself be entertaining, but also never at the expense of the incredibly important topics that it's discussing. Just a fantastic one. One of my favorites. One of my favorites, just period. I loved it. Then I rewatched Being John Malkovich, the Spike Jonze, Charlie Kaufman collaboration. I believe this was their first collaboration. It would not be their last. And just a really fun movie. It's just a weird movie. It's really a comedy, but it definitely takes itself seriously, which is also part of what makes it so fun. It doesn't say, whoa, look at this wacky thing that's going on. It has a wacky thing going on, but plays it in almost a deadpan style that I think really works, and it's not afraid to have, quite frankly, tragic moments throughout it, which is definitely part of Charlie Kaufman's style. I just mentioned him with Synecdoche, and while I wouldn't say this is Kaufman's strongest work, it's kind of one of those things where it just feels like it's such a Kaufman movie, and there's so much of that Kaufman style to it that it really just plays well. And I also think Jonze doesn't get enough credit for just how well he directed this and how well he got all the actors to play this very unique film. I love it. It's fantastic. Then I rewatched Moonlight. It's just a really good movie. I really do kind of feel like the more I watch it, I think that the Academy did get it right. I think they should have gone Moonlight over La La Land for Best Picture. It's, to me, there's parts of this movie that I still feel like you watch it and you're like, this almost feels like a Lifetime movie. Like especially early on, the first 45 minutes or so, it's just like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's this. I understand what's happening. But then it's not afraid to go in just completely different ways and really just hammer home the story it's trying to tell you. I still think that the beach scene with the two boys is such a fascinating scene, and one that makes me feel in a way I've never had a movie make me feel, of just it's this love scene, but it's also so suspenseful because about the homophobia and going on, and so if things go too poorly, it could have severe consequences for the character that we have come to really like. So it's this sort of tender, sweet moment that's also suspenseful and almost like a horror moment as well. That moment alone is fantastic, but the rest of the movie really good too. So big fan of it. And then I finally saw Green Book, so another Best Picture winner that there was some controversy over, although Green Book just, I don't know, it's fine. It's not a bad movie. I'm not mad that Green Book exists or anything like that, but it's just not for me, I guess is what I would say. I don't know. It's just corny. That's kind of the main way I would view it, is it's just corny. And like, I don't know. I did think the movie did some nice things to try and avoid the complete white savior trope. Well, it kind of had the setup of a white savior movie. I don't think it fully went white savior. So I felt like that was good. I know not everyone felt that way, but that's kind of how I felt, at least. Not that my opinion is the end all be all on it, but that is, that's how it made me feel. I just felt like, again, there was so much cheesiness to it. Like, even like something, it's such a small thing, but it's a perfect microcosm of the movie, of like they're watching baseball and they're all sitting around, watching the game, and someone comes up to bat, and I forget who it was, but someone comes up to bat and they're like, come on, you got to hit a home run here. And it's like, that's not how you watch baseball. You don't scream hopeful that the guy's going to hit a home run. And then he did, and they all went crazy. And it's just like, I don't know. I mean, it felt like Dumb and Dumber tackles a serious issue, which is like, okay, I'm not against that. It really did kind of feel like it was a comedy, but also trying to help, end racism. I know that, the director, Farley, said that he was, I remember in an interview, or it was one of those roundtables, he was asked, like, what his opinions are on it was some sort of political question. I forget what it was, but he was asked a political question, and he said he didn't want to answer because he really wanted to make sure people saw his movie. He didn't want to take away from the movie because he felt like it was a really important movie to see. But when your movie is just like, hey, racism isn't cool, you should have a black friend, it's like, it's kind of this like, okay, maybe in 1960 that's an important message. I feel like we're at this point well aware of the fact that like you should not throw out your glass because a black person drank out of it. Like, this is like such a obvious and hollow message to be putting out to people that, like, we know, like, we get it. We're not confused about the fact that, like, that's a thing. At least most of us aren't. I feel like there's a lot more nuanced films that, have been made. And so at the same time, it's not fair to completely crush the movie. Again, their intentions were in the right place. At the end of the day, still probably a good message to put out there, even if it is very surface level. And it was a fine movie. I'm giving it a fine 5 out of 10. It's just like the fact that this won Best Picture, of course it did. I then rewatched Y Tu Mama Tambien, one of my favorite movies. We're talking about Green Book, which, a lot of people feel like Roma should have won Best Picture. Director of Roma, Alfonso Cuarón, made this movie, and just the acting in this movie is unbelievable. It's so good. The way that you have these, 4 or 5 minute long uncut scenes at times where actors really have to go for it. They really have to express a ton of emotion, and sometimes really subtle emotion, in the way that they're able to pull this off. It's acting masterclass throughout this film in a really well done way, and obviously Cuarón deserves some credit for that as well, for how he captured all of that. It's a beautiful looking movie. I don't remember that there was that much sex in it, because I watched it 5-6 years ago. So I watched this one with some of my friends, and I was like, oh yeah, we're basically watching a lot of sex scenes here, but whatever. It's still a fantastic movie. And then I just think that the way that it could totally have been just like a mediocre teen sex comedy, but those little things they put throughout it to elevate above just doing that. And the narration throughout, talking about dark things that happen as our main characters are completely oblivious to those things and just having a good time, as we would learn is foreshadowing. I won't spoil it if you haven't seen the movie, but the ending, the entire last 15 minutes or so is just one of my favorite endings in a movie, period. I absolutely adore this movie, and if you haven't seen it, don't let your, hopefully it's not just because you don't like subtitles or something, because, this is if you are someone who doesn't watch a ton of foreign movies and haven't seen this one, check it out. It's fantastic. Don't watch it with your parents. Like I said, a lot of sex scenes, so be aware of that, but yeah, just fantastic. And finally, I think I rewatched this movie, but Robert Altman's The Player. This is another one I was blown away by. So I had, we're talking about 3 movies that I'm giving a 10 out of 10. this month alone. Obviously, two of them, or one of them I had already seen before in Y Tu Mama Tambien, but, Cleo from 5 to 7, and then now here, The Player. I love this movie. I think I saw it when I was younger. I think my dad showed it to me because I had these like memories of like specific parts that would kind of pop up, but it was long enough ago and I didn't have clear enough memory that every time a moment still happened, it still worked on me. To me, to be honest, I kind of pushed off watching this one again because for a while, just because I'm like, I get it. The movie about the film industry that's going to be filled with in-jokes that people that work in the film industry are going to love, but like your average person doesn't really care about. Those movies tend to not be crazy for me. Like, I didn't love Babylon that much. Like, I tend to not be super into that kind of film. So I kind of was hesitant. But this one, if you are like me and you are hesitant towards those things, don't be for this one because it absolutely works. It totally understands, you can't just make it within jokes. The jokes are something that, well, yes, if you're a big movie fan like I am, like I'm assuming you are if you're watching this video, you're going to get a lot of those jokes, but it also just works on like a thriller level. Again, talking about endings, the ending totally worked for me, but I was just so entertained throughout it. One of the most entertaining movies I've seen. It's just so fun to watch that, it's kind of one of those like perfect movies. And yeah, one of my favorite movies now, I think. I absolutely loved it. So yeah, that's my list. Those were the movies I saw this month. Let me know in the comments below. Do you have opinions on any of the movies I just talked about? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.